right, so to graph our sine function, the first thing we're going to do is go to our unit circle. You don't have to draw this. This is just reminding you of everything you should already know. Come on, pen. All right. So if we are over here at 0, my ordered pair is 1, 0, right? Is sine x or y? Y. So what is the y value there?
0.
So that means on our graph, we have the point 0, 0. The next place we're going to go, I'm going to label it on your graph, is pi over 2. And so let's go to your circle. And if we're up here at pi over 2, my ordered pair is 0, 1. So what's the sign? 1. Okay, so at pi over 2, you have 1, which I should label my y-axis to. I'm going to go every 2 is 1 just because it's pretty small. And then put another dot. So pi over 2 is 1. Okay with that? All right, what do you think my next tick mark is going to be? Pi. Excellent. So if I go to pi on my circle, ordered pair is -1, 0. So what's the sign at pi? 0. So we put a dot at pi 0. All right, we're still working our way around the circle. What do you think my next tick mark is going to be? Yep, 3 pi over 2. Nothing wants to work today. Okay, what do you think the last tick mark is going to be so I don't have to change marker colors again? 2 pi. All right, so let's go to our circle. 3 pi over 2. Down here, ordered pair 0, -1. So what's the sign of 3 pi over 2? -1. So we put a dot, -1. Then what about when I'm all the way back to 2 pi? 0. All right. So we have some dots on the right side of our graph. Let's work on the left side. So what do you think my labels are going to be on the left side? Yeah, just the negatives of all of those. And let's see if you guys are starting to see the pattern. So if I start over here, 0, -1, 0, 1, 0. Okay, do you see it? Just keep going. So I skipped a lot of points around the circle, didn't I? Okay, I could make you plot everything at pi over 6, pi over 4, pi over 3, 2 pi over 3, 3. I'm not going to make you plot all of those points. What you need to understand is the shape they create. These do not create a straight line. Like, it's not a pointy graph, okay? It's a sine curve, so it's a very curved graph. So when you draw it in, make sure it looks nice. So let's see. This will cooperate for me. Okay? If I see like super pointy, jaggedy looking graphs, you will lose points. The graphs don't have to be, I don't expect you to have perfect drawing skills. Clearly I do not. But just try to get the right shape going. This graph also continues on forever. We are stopping at negative 2 pi and 2 pi, but you could graph this. The wave just keeps going over and over and over. It's going to keep following that pattern. That wasn't too terrible, was it? Okay. Remember in Algebra 2 how you do like shifting of graphs? Once you knew a graph, you could do like shifting right and left, flipping, stretching, all that stuff. That's what we're going to do from here on out with our sine graph. You're going to know where the points are in this parent graph and then shift from there. Okay? It's not hard. Just look at there. That's all we have to do from now on. We're going to fill in the period and amplitude here in a minute. I want to go through and graph the cosine parent graph as well. So what do you think the labels on my x-axis are going to be? The same as what they were for sine, okay? So label just like we did for sine. All right, so then let's look at our circle. So at 0, what's cosine going to be? 1, okay. So on our graph, at 0, we start at 1. All right, what about at pi over 2? 0. What about at pi? Negative 1. Okay, just looking at those x values. 3 pi over 2? 0. And then when we go back to 2 pi? 1 again, right? So again, we have this pattern. 1, 0, negative 1, 0, 1. Plot the rest of our points. All right, and then again, it's a curve. That is your parent graph for cosine. Anybody questions so far? Okay, so we have to talk about labeling a few things. So first, there's this thing called the midline. It's the line that goes through the middle of your graph, okay? I'm just going to draw it in kind of as a dotted line. It's not an asymptote. I'm just sketching where the midline is. If your graph has not shifted up or down at all, it will always be on the x-axis. If it's moved, then the midline moves. Then the next thing we're going to look for is amp. That stands for amplitude. That's talking about the height from the midline to the top of the graph. So what do you think? From the x-axis to the top of the graph, how far is that? 1. Your amplitude then of the parent graph is 1. Amplitude will always be positive, because it's talking about height. Then PER, that stands for period. These graphs repeat themselves over and over and over. We want to know how long it takes for it to repeat itself. So if I start at 0, would you agree that it's going to start repeating here at 2 pi? Okay. So it takes from there to there to get one full cycle of the graph in. So how far is that? 2 pi. Yeah. So the period for your parent graph is 2 pi. Look at cosine. What do you think the amplitude of cosine is? The period is 2 pi. I would agree with that. Okay. What's the amplitude? 1, yes. Okay. So for your parent graph, it's 2 pi and 1. And again, if we're looking at period, if you trace this, it's going to start repeating again after 2 pi. So from 0 to 2 pi is one cycle of the graph. Yeah. Okay, so from the middle to the top, how far is that? That's all you're looking for. Okay. All right, so are we feeling okay with the parent graphs? Okay. So the shifting down here, all this A, B, and C stuff, a lot of this you've seen in Algebra 2. All right, so let's go through these. So when you're looking at the graph, you can see the amplitude, but if you're looking at the equation, where it comes from, it's the coefficient out in front. It deals with the vertical stretch part. So the amplitude is always absolute value of A, whatever's going on in front of your equation there. All right, and to find the period, if you're not looking at the graph, if you're just looking at the equation, you do 2 pi divided by b. B is whatever the coefficient on x is. Okay, then I think you know the rest of these. So if C is positive, does your graph shift up, down, left, or right? C is in there with the x, so left, yes. Yeah. So it's right in here. So like you might see an equation that says like y equals -2 sine of 3x minus pi over 4 plus 5. Not today. But then that would mean your graph is shifting to the right by pi over 4. Okay. All right. We'll stay pretty basic today. All right, so if C is negative, we go to the right. Does everyone remember this from Algebra 2? Okay, then D, you'll notice it's outside the parentheses. It's just that constant outside. So if D is positive, where does your graph go? Up. And if D is negative, good. All right. Then what if A is negative, the coefficient out in front? Yes, over which x? Yep. Over. So eventually we will get to a graph where you have an amplitude change, you have a period change, you shift left or right, up or down, and have a reflection. We will get to the point where you can do all of those, okay? Again, not today, but maybe so. We'll build up to it. Any questions on any of those transformations? Okay, let's try some. Oh, do you have a question?
So I feel like we're used to seeing the pi over 2 and pi on the unit circle. Will it need it so that if we graph the vertical axis?
So we're basically unwrapping the, like you could have made a little, like a T-chart here, like X and Y. And if I'm plugging in 0, pi over 2, pi, like those are what I'm plugging into the equation. What do I get out of it? I get a 0, I get a 1, I get a 0, I get a -1, I get a 0. Okay, like you're plugging into essentially that equation. Now that we have that parent graph, you're not plugging anything in anymore. Okay, like you're just going to move points. Okay, guys, so let's do number 3 together. All right, so what's the only thing that's different about this one from our compared to our parent graph? The 3. What is the 3? Amplitude. Yes, so your amplitude is 3. What about the period? Was there anything that changed it from the parent graph? Yeah, it's just 2 pi. And if you wanted to go through this part, the 2 pi over b, you can. There's not a number written there, but what number is in front of x, even though we can't see it? 1. So 2 pi divided by 1 is 2 pi. Okay, so that's the process you're going through. All right, since the period did not change, that means the labels on your x-axis are not going to change. They're going to be the ones from the circle, pi over 2, pi, 3 pi over 2, and 2 pi. So go ahead and label your x-axis. Someday, Michael. Yeah, sure. Okay, then you also need to label your y-axis. I'm still going to go with every 2 being 1. It's up to you, just make sure you label. Okay, now we can actually plot our points. So what that 3 is going to do, is basically stretching your graph vertically. So this graph is going to get a whole lot taller. You're multiplying your y values. So what's 0 times 3? So your zeros are not going to move anywhere. They stay right on your x-axis. What about 1 times 3? So that's going to be all the way up to positive 3. Where's this one going to be? Negative 3, yeah. And that's all that's going to be different. So you're going to be at 0 still. Up to 3, 0, -3, 0. Follow that pattern on the other side. Make a nice, pretty graph. Hopefully prettier than mine. Not bad? Yep, amplitude change, so you have a vertical stretch, that's all that has happened. Okay, we're all right with that. Let's turn the page and try again. All right, guys, so now we have y equals cosine of 4. So what's the amplitude on this one? 1. Okay. All right, but the period's going to change, right? We have a b value. Do you guys see that, how we have a coefficient on x this time? So to find the period, we have to do 2 pi divided by 4. What do we get? Pi over 2. So there's a couple ways you can look at it. One is this means the entire graph will happen by the time you get to pi over 2. So your whole cosine curve, the up, the down, the middle, the up, will happen by the time you get to pi over 2. So you would technically see 4 of them by the time you get to 2 pi. I'm not going to make you graph that many of them. What we're going to do is relabel our x-axis so we still see the same amount of the graph as the parent function. Okay? So instead of my last label out here being 2 pi, what do you think it's going to be? Pi over 2. Yeah, it's whatever your period is. This is hating me today. All right, let's try that again. Okay, so this is going to be pi over 2. All right, now I'm going to write up here your other labels were, so that one was 2 pi, this one was 3 pi over 2, pi and pi over 2, right? How did I turn 2 pi into pi over 2? What did I do? It divided by 4, right? Okay, that's what you're going to do to all of these. So 3 pi over 2 divided by 4. Divided by 4. That is the same as 3 pi over 2 times 1/4. So what do I get? 3 pi over 8. That is the next label. The one that was pi, what is it going to become? Pi over 4. Yeah, that one's not bad. Okay, and what about the one that was pi over 2? Pi over 8, yeah. And then same thing, now you've got them on the negative side. So negative pi over 8, negative pi over 4, negative 3 pi over 8, and negative pi over 2. Does that make sense where I'm getting those labels from? Or is anyone like, I don't see what you're doing? Please ask if you're stuck, okay? Because you're going to have to relabel your axis a lot. Okay? All right, so now we're going to plot our points. Because we relabeled the x-axis, you can just plot your parent graph points where they were. Okay, so what I mean by that is the first point you had was up at 1, and then the next tick mark was 0, then it was negative 1, 0, 1. Follow your pattern on the left. So the graph really looks the same as the parent graph, but it's not because of how you labeled your x-axis. So do you see how labeling the x-axis is going to be pretty important? Okay. And I know it's annoying to label every single tick mark, but yes, you need to. Okay. All right, questions on that one? Okay, let's do number 5 together. All right, so we've got a negative, we have a 2, and we have a 1/2. So we've got several things to deal with. What is the amplitude of this? Is it -2 or +2? Positive. Remember, amplitude's never negative. So amplitude is 2. You can jot over to the side if you want, like, okay, reminder, I have to flip this. And then how do we find the period? Two pi over what? 2 pi over 1/2. So that's like, I'm gonna move my flip. That is the same as 2 pi times 2. So what do we get? 4 pi. So what does that make that last tick mark on your graph? 4 pi. Okay. So again, think about what the original labels were. Pi over 2, pi, 3 pi over 2, and 2 pi. How did I turn 2 pi into 4 pi? Multiply by 2. So 3 pi over 2 times 2. What do you think? 3 pi. Okay. The 2's are going to cancel. What's the next one going to be? 2 pi. And the one after that? Pi. And they will be evenly spaced like that. Always. Okay. Label your y-axis. Okay. So we've dealt with the period. Now we have our amplitude and our flip to deal with. So the parent graph points for sine normally starts at 0, up to 1, 0, -1, 0, right? You are basically taking those y values this time times a -2. So is 0 going to change? No, it's still 0. But then the one that's at +1, where's that going to go to? -2, all the way down there. So you're going to start at 0. And you're going to go to -2. After that would be 0. What about your next dot? Where's it going? +2, yeah. 0, and then on the left side it'll be +2, 0, -2, 0. Yeah, let me draw it and then I'll get your question, okay? So, parent graph of sine would have done this, right? Okay. Because there's a negative with our 2, the flipping and the stretching. I did it all at once, okay? All right, there's no shifting on your homework for tonight, but I want to show you the shifting since I'm here today. I feel like that's always better. So let's do the next couple together at least. All right, so number 6, sine of x minus pi over 2. Okay, what's the amplitude? 1, okay. What's the period? Just 2 pi, okay? If you look, is there a coefficient on x? No, or you can think of a 1 being there, so 2 pi over 1, it's just 2 pi. Nothing weird happening with your period. Then we have minus pi over 2. what does that tell me to do? Go to the right, yes. The PS stands for phase shift. That's just talking about right or left. So I'm going to the right by pi over 2. Okay. All right, so my x-axis labels, they are going to be exactly what we started with, okay, because we didn't change the period at all. So this is going to be pi over 2, pi, 3 pi over 2, and 2 pi. And the negatives. All right, I'm going to go ahead and graph where the dots would be for the parent graph. If you have like different colored pens or something, you may want to use that here. So in green, I'm going to put the parent graph points. So sign was okay, maybe in green. I'm not going to connect them because we don't really need the graph, we just need where those points are. So I just plotted parent graph points, that's all I've done. You know, and if you don't have different colors, you could always do these like as X's and then the shifted ones as dots, whatever you want to do. Okay. We still have to do the shift then. So we have to move to the right by pi over 2. How many tick marks is pi over 2? Just 1, right? It's over 1. Okay. So what you're doing is taking your green dots and moving them 1 tick mark to the right. So this guy's going, come on, red. Going that way. So he ends up there. Then you move to the next one. It goes over. Okay? Your very last one doesn't have anywhere to go, so you don't put it anywhere. And then you're going to need to figure out what should be over here. The nice things with these graphs, the way we change the period on them and all of that, your ends are always going to match. So whatever this end is, which in this case is -1, that's where your other end is going to be. So let me put that last dot in and sketch it and see if you guys are there. Again, none of these on your homework tonight. We're just sort of. Okay, so right by pi over 2, right? So if I go from 0, it's just 1 tick mark until I get to pi over 2. So I'm just moving everything 1 tick mark. Like if the shift had been right pi, well, that's way over here. I'd have to do 2 tick marks. So this one is this guy moved over, and this end will always match. The 2 ends always match. Okay. Is that the part you were talking about? Okay. All right, let's do one more together. Are we okay on 6? We hanging in there? Yes. Okay, I don't see any like tears right now, so that's good. I don't see anything. All right. So let's look at 6. Or 7, sorry. What's your amplitude? 1, okay. What's the period? 2 pi. And guys, I actually want to change this graph. Make this x plus pi, not x plus pi over 4. It's going to make your life a whole lot easier. All right. So if it's x plus pi, where are we shifting? Okay, so I'm hearing right and left. Let's get that clarified first. The plus pi, is that right or left? Left, okay. So left by pi, and then that is 2 tick marks, you're right. So we are going left by pi. And then VS, that just stands for vertical shift. So up or down, where are we going? Down 1, okay. So that's everything we have to do. So we start every single time by labeling your x-axis. Do I have to do anything strange to my x-axis? No, it's just those parent graph labels. Pi over 2. Pi, 3 pi over 2, and 2 pi. And label your y-axis, -1 and -2. All right. In green, again, I am doing the parent graph points. So does cosine start at 0, 0 or 0, 1? 1, right? So green dots for the parent graph. That's just your cosine graph, kind of looks like a W, just the parent graph. So now, I've got to do some shifting. I have to go left by pi and down 1. So how many tick marks does it take till I get to pi? You can see how it's 2? Okay. So for my left, I'm going to start over here. I have to go 2 tick marks over and then down 1. So I'll draw a little arrow for you. So this guy's going 2 over and down 1. Okay? And then just keep working your way across. So the 3 pi over 2, that goes 2 over, down 1. 2 over, down 1. And once you start to see your new pattern, you can certainly just start following that. So, okay, see this -1 over here? Yep, so you've got to do all of that over and down. So then I took this point, over, down. This point, over, down. Okay? Yep. This is a very systematic process. You know, you need to just go through the steps of your graph. Label everything, find the period, shift, all of that stuff, right? I think especially like on this one where we're moving over 2 tick marks, the different colors help because you start to forget which dot you've moved and which one you've left alone. So, hold it. The end. So this end came from this point. I went over 2 and down 1, okay? But then really you can just start following your new pattern because it's -2, -1, 0, -1, -2, -1, 0, -1, -1, And also your ends will always match. Okay, and then it's kind of just see what's happening with your pattern, filling in the in-between. Okay, we are going to not do 8 and 9 right now because I do not want your heads